Joe Rogan just hinted at a massive impending event forcing UFO disclosure. He's also spilled that Elon Musk knows everything about aliens and UFOs. Declassified JFK assassination files support key Majestic documents on JFK's quest for UFO disclosure. Marco Rubio believes the US has recovered alien technology and given it to private military contractors. Amateur astronomers continue to get clearer images of Three-Eye Atlas than anything released by NASA. These stories and more on Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review.
You are listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome to the December 6th edition of Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review. We've got a few stories this week. Last week we had the release of the Age of Disclosure documentary that really got people talking and got a lot of mainstream media attention. And this week we continue to get some fallout from that, some follow-on. And one of the things that really I think is very noticeable in public officials being interviewed after the release of Age of Disclosure is that there seems to be more candor, that insiders seem to be emboldened by the Age of Disclosure. And so here I want to play a short clip with Rear Admiral Timothy Gallaudet, who's very outspoken now on exactly what is being covered up by the government. So let's listen to Admiral Gallaudet.
Former Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet served as the Navy's chief oceanographer and meteorologist and as acting administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Why'd you take part in that? And of the voices in there, are you convinced that these are credible folks that are really coming forward for the first time?
All those folks are credible, Brett. They're all colleagues of mine. I've worked with them for years. This is going to change the arc of human history. The fact that we're not alone in the universe and that higher order non-human intelligences are visiting us and interacting with us, whose intent we really are unsure of still. That's just mind-blowing.
How many people know this?
This has been an 8-decade cover-up. The total list has to amount to 100 or more.
In 2015, Gallaudet was commanding personnel during a naval exercise off the East Coast when he received an email warning of near mid-air collisions. Attached was a video of the suspected threat.
Wow, look at it fly!
Gallaudet says the next day the email disappeared from his account. The Pentagon would eventually declassify the video more than 5 years later.
The Navy is sitting on a trove of UAP video data that they're not releasing.
So there you have Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, quite outspoken in his belief that we are being visited and that there has been recovery of craft and non-human intelligence, and that this is being covered up by the public officials, or what is now known as the Legacy UFO Program. And this is something that I think is very significant, because now when insiders or former officials are emboldened to speak more of the truth that they know, we are going to be having, I think, an accelerated disclosure process. And that seems to be what is happening now with the release of this Age of Disclosure, where you had 34 public officials being videotaped and talking about what they know of the classified UFO programs, the existence of a legacy program run by corporations and the intelligence community that is covering up the existence of extraterrestrial technology and non-human intelligence, that I think we're going to be having many more people of high status coming forward and talking about the truth of this. Now, here is something that I thought was also very important. And again, this is a kind of consequence of the Age of Disclosure documentary being released. Joe Rogan came out and actually did an interview on the Jesse Michels podcast, and he talked about something massive coming, that he sees the age of disclosure and these public officials coming forward and talking as something that is suggesting or hinting at an impending event concerning UFO disclosure. So let's listen to what Joe Rogan has to say about the age of disclosure and public officials coming forward.
I think we're all here for a reason. I think we're here to experience something very strange and profound. And there's an event that we're building up to. And I think that's why there's this focus on disclosure. That's why this documentary hit so hard. Guys like Marco Rubio are sticking their neck out, and Tulsi Gabbard and Rep Luna. You know, she came on my podcast too, and she was telling me some stuff that was just like mind blowing. And she really got me to read the Book of Enoch. She's like, you got to read that. Like that is nuts. And that could have easily been attached to the religious canon. But some rabbis disagreed with it because it didn't vibe with the Torah. So like, let's chuck that one out. But it's in the same lump of Dead Sea Scrolls as they have the Book of Isaiah, which is really fascinating, because Wes Huff, when he was on my podcast, explained to me that the Book of Isaiah and that they found in the Dead Sea Scrolls is verbatim the same as the Book of Isaiah that was 1,000 years more recent.
Whoa!
1,000 years. So this was the oldest version that they thought was the oldest version, and then they found the Dead Sea Scrolls version, which was 1,000 years older.
So there you have Joe Rogan talking about the consequence of the age of disclosure coming forward, and something is coming. We're building up to something, and I think he's absolutely correct. We are building up to something, and I think eventually what we're going to have is some official announcement by someone like President Trump about the UFO cover-up and disclosing some of the truth of what's happening. And we probably won't have to wait too long, because there is a build-up that we are witnessing right now. And the age of disclosure broke new ground in terms of all of these senior public officials coming forward at the same time. And so how do you kind of like trump that? Is, well, you get the president to come forward, and I think that's what's going to happen. All right, so something very sad. James Rink, who was the creator of the popular SuperSoldierTalk YouTube channel, has died of cardiac-related issues at age 45, and certainly still only a young man. His autobiography, Lone Wolf Alpha Squad Copy Over, described in detail the difficult, challenging life he had with opioids and so forth, dealing with pain, and also his involvement in these MK Ultra programs and super soldier training for the secret space programs. James was he wasn't a big, imposing guy at all. He was kind of like, I think, 5'5" or something. So he wasn't a big guy, but he had a really big heart, and he had a lot of courage. So he organized these conferences and online events involving super soldiers. He was determined. He was really committed to getting the truth out. And at his last Super Soldier conference in Orlando, Florida, in October, he believes, and he put out, and he told people even before the event that he was being targeted. And he said that he had been targeted to stimulate heart failure. And this resonated with me, because he actually invited me to go to that conference in Orlando in October, and I had to say no, I couldn't, because I was still recovering from what I have been told was an attack using some sort of poison. And again, it cardiac related, and certainly there is technology that does exist which can induce cardiac arrest and problems for people. And I think this is the way in which a lot of UFO researchers have been targeted. I remember Stephen Greer in the late 1990s, he talked about being targeted and poisoned with some cancer-related weapon systems, and one of his chief aides, Sherry Adamiak, was also targeted in that way. Max Spears was another prominent whistleblower, someone talking about secret space programs, and he died after also being targeted. So I think this is the way in which people are eliminated, that they are targeted using these non-lethal technologies, using some kind of directed energy weapon or something that can disseminate poison at a distance to induce all sorts of illnesses in people, so that it looks like it was death by natural causes as opposed to them being deliberately targeted or removed. Now, why was he removed? I mean, he was only 45 years old. Why was James eliminated? Why was he targeted? Well, I think that he was helping a lot of people come forward who believed that they were part of super soldier programs and that they had served on secret space programs. And this is something that is revealing much more about what's going on behind the scenes than what the kind of like official disclosure narrative as we find it in the age of disclosure allows. I mean, I think the good thing about the age of disclosure, the documentary, is that it does promote the disclosure process on UFO crash retrievals and the existence of a legacy UFO program, reverse engineering, and so forth. But it definitely does not go far enough in revealing the extent to which these technologies have been developed, the creation of secret space programs, the role of the Navy's Solar Warden program. All of that, they're probably going to delay disclosing for another decade or something. And I think people like James Rink and myself, we were a threat to some people. And unfortunately, James succumbed to his illness. Right, here is something, again, concerning Joe Rogan, which I think is quite interesting, that Joe Rogan, in his interview with Jesse Michels, describes how he had a vivid dream concerning extraterrestrials, or benevolent extraterrestrials meeting with him. So let's listen to this vivid dream that Joe Rogan had and what he had to say about it.
So I was telling you before we get started that I had the most bizarre dream I've ever had in my life last night. The most realistic and most bizarre dream. And it's so hard to try to explain how strange this was. But I was in some weird corridor that looked like a building but was odd. Very strange. And I was encountering these beings that looked like people but very different. They were very thin and they were slightly on the tall side. And they had big heads, like larger than normal, with larger than normal eyes. But they looked like people, and they were playful, and they were scaring me. They scared me, and then they joked around, like we were just joking around. It was the most realistic dream I've ever had in my life. And I woke up, and I could not go back I had to stay up. I got up at 3:30 in the morning, and I just went to the gym, and I worked out for a couple hours, and I was like, what the fuck was that? But it was very bizarre in that there was communication going on. It was like, God, I want to read into this because I know it's just a dream, but it was like, get comfortable with this.
Well, that is a very telling experience. This is not an AI production. This was Joe Rogan talking about an experience he had on his podcast. And I don't think it was in the Jesse Michels interview. It might have been in something else because this was actually on Joe Rogan's podcast. So what Rogan was describing here is an encounter with his star family, and that likely they are his star family, just the way he described them being kind of very playful and making jokes and so forth. That's kind of like the kind of personality Joe Rogan has. And this is typically how benevolent extraterrestrials first make contact with their starseeds. They do it in dreams, or people have out-of-body experiences before the physical encounter is happening. And because of Joe Rogan's status as kind of having the world's largest podcast, this is very significant because someone like Joe Rogan having extraterrestrial contact is going to be something that's going to have very big consequences. All right. Now, here's again, this is Joe Rogan on the Jesse Michels podcast. So, and again, Rogan spills something about Elon Musk and what Elon Musk knows about aliens and UFOs. So let's listen to what Joe Rogan believes, based on his friendship and his interviews with Elon Musk, what Musk really knows on the UFO topic. Because publicly, Musk has said nothing to suggest that any of this is real, but Rogan has a very different take on what Musk is doing.
I feel like you straddle this interesting world where you have people on who are adamantly pro UFO, and then you have people like Elon Musk on who they run SpaceX. You would think he would be, completely privy to all of our UFO secrets.
He's a sly dog.
That's what you
Let me tell you
think.
something. He's my homie, but he's a sly dog.
If he was debating like in a room with David Grush on your show,
He wouldn't do it.
he wouldn't do
Also,
it.
he has this one line: "If aliens are real, they're sure all subtle." I don't think that's subtle, dude. I think you know things that you're not letting on to.
Or you'll say I'm an alien.
I talked about this with Dan yesterday on the Age of Disclosure podcast. Of course he knows, but of course you can't say anything. Like you can't defy the government if you want enormous grants and you're building rockets. You're working with NASA,
Yeah.
Grush,
your whole business.
Grush has his suspicions. He has his suspicions as well.
I think he does.
I think they all do. Listen, man, it's nonsense. If he knows anything, he knows what they know. He's read into all that stuff. You don't think he looked into it, but you can't talk about it. Guess what? I wouldn't either. If I was running SpaceX and I had to go do this fucking dumbass comedian's podcast once a year, and he's asking me about aliens, like nope, no aliens. Whole thing comes to the thing.
Your entire net worth gets.
Okay, so there you have Joe Rogan talking about what he thinks Elon Musk really knows, and that it's quite reasonable that Musk is really just lying outright when he says he doesn't know anything about aliens, because he's got all of these high-level clearances for SpaceX to be able to get contracts with major military services, and that means being read into classified programs, and that when you're read into classified programs, it just means that sometimes you have to outright lie when it comes to the existence of that program. So I think Joe Rogan is absolutely correct, and just to clarify things, earlier when I was talking about this interview or this vivid dream, that came from the interview Joe Rogan did with Dan Farah on his podcast just before this other interview that Joe Rogan did on the Jesse Michels podcast. Right, here is an interview I did with Jeff Cruikshank, who is an Australian, let's say, security intelligence expert. He has worked as an electrical engineer, and he became interested in the JFK assassination after reading a book, actually my book, on Kennedy's last stand. And he has been studying the JFK assassination files as they've been released, and he has found some important corroboration for Majestic documents. Now, the Majestic documents, these were released beginning in around 1984, and Dr. Robert Wood and his son Ryan around 1993 began doing due diligence and corroborating these Majestic documents, and they got more documents leaked to them, which they spent well over a decade, 2 decades, corroborating. And in the recently declassified JFK assassination files that President Trump ensured were released to the general public, there were more documents that came forward, and these corroborated the story in the Majestic documents and in my JFK, Kennedy's Last Stand book, that Kennedy was targeted by this Majestic 12 group because of his interest in UFO disclosure. And so Jeff Cruikshank goes through some of these recently released JFK assassination files and talks about their significance in kind of like understanding the chronology of the events that led up to JFK's assassination. So definitely well worth listening to this if you want to dive into the details of what it was that JFK was doing and the kind of opposition he experienced even though he was president. Well, here is an example of soft disclosure, which I think is also an example of predictive programming. Now, this is a TV series just called Space Ark. Sorry, not called Space Ark, it's called The Ark. And so The Ark depicts the journey of a space ark escaping the Earth during some cataclysmic events, and that in total there were 15 of these space arks that were built and they were sent out all over the place. But the primary or the closest destination was Proxima Centauri, one of the planets there. And it depicts how the space ark has this crew which is hibernating and how some emergency leads to the crew waking up and the rest of the crew gets killed and so forth. And this is, I think, a good example of predictive programming, because what it's doing is it is kind of setting the scene for people in the future being confronted with some kind of like public announcement concerning upcoming cataclysmic events, and that you really need to get onto these space arks or craft that are evacuating the planet. And this kind of fits in with the scenario that the deep state, the cabal, rather than surrender, will, in its final act of desperation, concoct some kind of planetary emergency, and that they will encourage as many people as possible to get onto these evacuating space arks and leave the planet. Now, this is also related to ideas such as the harvest or return of the gods, that ultimately this is about getting as many humans as possible to voluntarily agree to leaving the Earth, jumping on ships, and going to wherever it is that they have been told represents safety for them. And of course, these arcs are run by, the same old. It's just like the deep state, the psychopaths who have brought the planet to the brink of destruction. These will be the same people that will be in charge of the space arcs. So all this is part of the Ark series. There is a second season which will be coming out soon, and I think it's a good example of predictive programming and soft disclosure. Right. Well, here is an article about Marco Rubio, who is currently the Secretary of State and also the National Security Advisor to President Trump. And it's very interesting that in this article that appeared on the, I guess it's a blog site, I'm not sure where, Public is a blog site created by Michael Schellenberger, and he has written an article on this public blog site about Secretary Rubio believing that the US has recovered alien technology and has given it to private military contractors. And this goes towards the idea of an impending disclosure event I talked about earlier with Joe Rogan, because this is filtering up now to the highest levels of government. We know, according to Haim Eshed and also David Grush, that Trump has been briefed on the existence of extraterrestrials and of the existence of advanced technologies that can revolutionize the planet, and that he's aware of those. And now with his national security advisor, Marco Rubio, kind of like digging into that, and also Vice President J.D. Vance also digging into the UFO issue, I think we're going to very soon reach the point where we're going to have an official announcement by Trump that will basically make him the disclosure president. And personally, I think it's going to happen after a resolution of the Ukraine-Russia war happens. And so this is where we get into this kind of like very strange situation where major European states, Britain, France, and Germany, are hindering US-led peace talks to resolve the Russia-Ukraine conflict, while President Trump is genuinely trying to bring an end of the war. Now, this is not conspiracy theory anymore, because Russian President Putin, no less, is saying that the Europeans are sabotaging peace efforts and are warmongers, and that Trump is genuine in wanting to bring about peace. So this is something that's no longer conspiracy theory. This is like a fact that has been pointed out or confirmed by no less than the president of Russia, that you have this current situation. So why is that happening? Well, I think the exopolitical element explains why that is happening. That world peace leads to disclosure of extraterrestrial life and reverse-engineered alien technologies. The extraterrestrials have made it abundantly clear from the 1950s that they won't release their technology if humans continue to weaponize everything they are given for endless wars. War leads to continuation of the status quo, which benefits a satanic global elite that feeds off human misery, aka loosh. So this gives us an understanding of why it is that you have this kind of like situation where you have Europeans really wanting the war in Ukraine to fester on and sabotaging peace efforts. Trump wants disclosure. Trump wants disclosure as he wants to make the US the manufacturing hub for advanced alien technologies that will help global consciousness evolve and make the US great again. In contrast, the globalists, deep state Satanists, want war as it allows them to keep humanity in the dark ages of scarcity, limitation, and manipulation. And it's very interesting that all of those leaders of these major European states, Britain, France, and Germany, are incredibly unpopular in their countries. And the people in the British people and the French and the Germans, they don't want a war with Russia. They don't want to keep on pouring resources and having this war perpetuate in Russia and Ukraine. And of course, President Trump is trying, I think, genuinely to bring about a resolution of the war effort. Right. So here we have a kind of reference to the dead podcaster, famous podcaster Rush Limbaugh, who was right about the global elite believing they are descendants of ancient Martians who fled to Earth. And so this is Gigi Young, who reposted this comment from Rush Limbaugh that he believed that the elite believed themselves to be related by blood to alien gods from Mars. And she goes on to say that this space alien origin myth has been seeded to the public for decades by shows like Ancient Aliens and the work of Eric von Daniken and Zecharia Sitchin. Today, most people in ufology believe some degree of this propaganda, generally due to a materialist level of analysis or a lack of spiritual perception and knowledge. It is much easier to make spiritual topics tangible, physical, than to deal with the personal transformations required to develop psychically, to spiritually perceive angels and the conditions of our ancient past. So Gigi Young covers this in a YouTube video and a presentation, and I have invited her to my show, and I hope to be able to interview her soon. But I think what she's pointing out here is absolutely correct, that the elite truly believe that they are descendants of these ancient Martian gods who came to the Earth, and that they have passed on that information from generation to generation, as well as the secrets of some of the technologies that were brought over by the Martians and hidden away around the world, so that these global elite can continue to exercise their dominance over the rest of humanity. Okay, so here is the nomination hearing before the Senate for the incoming NASA administrator, Jared Isaacman, who made an opening statement at his confirmation hearing for NASA administrator, which I thought was very interesting in terms of the emphasis.
Thank you, Chairman Cruz.
Be playing or giving. So let me just begin with a little bit of Jared Isaacman talking about what his priorities are going to be as NASA administrator.
Ranking Member Cantwell, Senator Sheehy for that very generous introduction, and distinguished members of the committee. I'm honored and grateful to be here before you again as President Donald Trump's nominee to lead the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. To begin, I'd like to acknowledge my family. So my parents, Sandy and Don Isaacman, behind me, my wife, Monica, my two wonderful daughters, Mila and Liv. So over the years, I've found many ways to challenge their patience, and politics is certainly no exception. We are also joined today by 7 astronauts, some of my closest friends and crewmates, together with NASA astronauts that have come to this hearing in support. Thank you very much. I also want to acknowledge and appreciate that Senator Britt from the state of Alabama is here today. So not only home to Marshall Space Flight Center, but also to Space Camp, matter deeply to my family. And now I'm beyond thankful for a chance to repay my debt to this nation. Message of urgency. After more than a half century, America is set to launch NASA astronauts around the moon in just a matter of months. This is a challenging endeavor, to say the least, and one that requires full-time leadership. Secretary Duffy, in his letter to this committee endorsing my nomination, emphasized this point. The message is shared by more than 4 dozen other letters of support, including an online petition started by members of the NASA workforce and a letter from 36 NASA astronauts who, like me, have sat through anomaly investigations, launch and flight readiness reviews, and have accepted the risks of going to space and understand what is at stake. And I know it's not lost on anyone in this room that we are in a great competition with a rival that has the will and the means to challenge American exceptionalism across multiple domains, including in the high ground of space. This is not the time for delay, but a time for action. Because if we fall behind, if we make a mistake, we may never catch up, and the consequences could shift the balance of power here on Earth. This Congress, and specifically this committee, understand the urgency of the moment, placing a historic investment in human space exploration that President Trump signed in the One Big Beautiful Bill. It's now time for NASA and its partners to deliver. To that end, I want to assure you, senators, I'm not here for personal gain, to favor or enrich contractors, to close centers, or disrupt programs that are essential to completing America's objectives in space. If confirmed, I'm here to bring urgency and an extreme focus to the mission, to do all I can working with the best and brightest at NASA to lead humanity's efforts to unlock the secrets of the universe and ensure American leadership across the last great frontier. In concert with that grand endeavor, we will ensure the following: the success of the Artemis program that President Trump began during his first term. America will return to the moon before our great rival, and we will establish an enduring presence to understand and realize the scientific, economic, and national security value on the lunar.
Okay, well, that is really covers the most important part of, I think, Jared Isaacman's opening speech before the U.S. Senate hearing on his confirmation, that President Trump and him as the future NASA administrator is committed to the Artemis program of returning humans to the moon, and that this will be done before rivals such as China send their people up there. And so what that means is that the ancient technology that exists on the moon from earlier civilizations there is very likely going to be something that is going to be revealed in the near future. Once you get humans returning to the moon and establishing a long-term presence, which means bases on the moon. He talked about nuclear propulsion systems, and so that opens the door to a lot of exotic propulsion systems rather than just kind of liquid fuel rocket propulsions. And interestingly, because Isaacman is a very close friend of Elon Musk, it means that SpaceX will play a significant role in the Artemis program in returning to the moon, and that will be a stepping stone for Musk's dream of future missions to Mars, and that NASA will essentially be involved in that. And so the two key questions that I raised in my kind of tweet on this is whether Isaacman will play a role in disclosing some of the ancient technology found on the moon, and whether he will end NASA's cover-up of visiting extraterrestrial life. So this again goes back to the idea of a major impending event coming through President Trump acknowledging or revealing something concerning the existence of extraterrestrial life, of a legacy UFO program to study this phenomenon, and that there'll be a lot of pressure placed on NASA to reveal some of the truth of what it knows. Here is an interview I did with Rebecca Rose and Erica Amorina about their respective roles in the Galactic Envoy program, and there is very strong parallels to them in terms of when they began, when they actually got involved or were taken into secret space programs. And in my interview, we talk about them at very similar ages. I mean, I think they were born in the same year. I think it was in 1982, that they were taken to bases such as Great Lakes Naval Air Station and the Dulce Underground Base, and that they were subjected to MK Ultra mind control, genetic modification, trauma bonding, sexual abuse, beforehand being handed off or sold to the German Dark Fleet, or the Nachtwaffen. And then they were sent to a Dark Fleet base on the moon and Mars and the Kuiper Belt, where they were under the ultimate control of Draco reptilians. And interestingly, Erica recalls meeting Rebecca when they were both 17. So that would have been, I guess if they were 1982, that would have been 1999, that they met in the secret space program. And they eventually were recruited into the Solar Warden program, and eventually discovered that they were galactic envoys, that they were part of this galactic envoy program where they were recruited from extraterrestrial worlds to incarnate on the earth, and that their husbands or their partners on those worlds would watch over them as members of some extraterrestrial organization, whether that would be the Galactic Federation, the Ashtar Command, or something else. So very interesting that you have these two ladies, very brave ladies who have been through a tremendous amount of abuse, but they have been able to remember key elements of what they were subjected to, and just found these incredible parallels in, not only in terms of being born around the same time, but being taken to the same bases and having the same kind of MK Ultra techniques used on them, and also then being recruited to these Dark Fleet bases on the Moon, Mars, and the Kuiper Belt. So fascinating interview, and I hope you get to watch that. Right, well, here is a new amateur astronomer photograph of 3I Atlas. And as you can see, you have a sunward facing stream of particles. So this is facing towards the sun. The left-hand side of the screen, that kind of short streak, that's facing towards the sun, which shouldn't be there if the sun is to the left of the screen. And so normally that would mean that the solar wind is pushing all of the particles being released by a comet away from the sun, which would be to the right. And indeed, on the right, you do have a very long, kind of like what some would say is a tail, but some others are saying, well, these are, rather than being a tail, this is a sort of like ion emission. But certainly it is a very interesting anomaly to have this anti-tail, or this sunward-facing anti-tail. And then the tail itself, whether that's just a tail of cometary debris, or whether it's the ion remains of some kind of jets or propulsion system, that's still something up for speculation. But the interesting thing here is that you have a very clear image of 3I Atlas, which is much clearer than the images that NASA has released. Now, NASA just released another image from the Hubble Space Telescope, and that is not as clear as this. So how can that be? How can amateur amateur astronomers using kind of like their own home grown telescopes be able to capture such detailed images of 3I Atlas, as opposed to the Hubble Space Telescope, which has images that are much poorer in resolution? Something definitely seems to be going on here. So that really covers all of these stories for this week. Now, I wanted to mention that we are now 1 week out from my next webinar, which is going to be what's coming in 2026, Revelations and Revolutions. And I'm going to be joined in giving a presentation by three others, Stuart Swerdlow, Lily Nova, and Brad Johnson, who all have track records in predicting future events from very different sources. Stuart Swerdlow, he has good connections within NASA and within the kind of like military intelligence community, and he's able to share some of that information that he's getting from insiders. Lily Nova does a lot of remote viewing and communicating with different extraterrestrials, and Brad Johnson is someone who has a track record in using a range of psychic tools to be able to get accurate information about future events. So I'm really looking forward to talking about what is happening or what we can expect in 2026, along with Stuart, Lily, and Brad. So there's still plenty of time to register. Just go to exopolitics.org or go to the link in the description, and you can then go to Crowdcast and you can register that way. Or if you want a discount, you can go and become a Patreon member. If you become a Galactic Patron, which is the tier 3 level of membership, you get to do this webinar for $38, and you also get access to all of my previous webinars from this year. So that's a great deal for people that are wanting to explore what to expect in 2026. So I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank all of you who are Patreon subscribers for your support. It really does make a difference. It supports me and my Exopolitics Today team in putting out all this information for free on YouTube and other platforms. So thank you and aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.